First item on the agenda today is, are we online?
Yes,
we are. For the viewer who's online, we are online. First item on this agenda is apologies. We do have apologies from Councillor John Wright and David Webster. Are there any other apologies? Okay, moving on. Item number 2, late items introduced by the chair. I just have a couple. I have, and I've not even warned you, sorry. They are the usual annual welcome to new members of the committee. Following the council's AGM, we've had a slight shift in membership. And just to encourage people to participate freely in these meetings, there is no such thing as a stupid question. We'd rather you ask than not in an audit capacity. And an encouragement, once again, as I do every year, to leave party politics outside the room and just act together for the interests of the city. Second late item, which I'd like to go on record, is that I do believe, although it seems to have been strung out, that this might be the last meeting Richard's joining us for before he retires. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I wanted to say that means Richard's now got time to attend children's parties if anybody wants to book him. But yeah. Sincerely, thank you for the support I've had over the last few years and countless chairs before, and committee members inside committee, outside of committee, and at CMAP. I think you get the point. So thank you very much. Moving on then, item number 3 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any? Nice and simple. Okay. Item number 4 is to review and approve the minutes of the meeting from the 26th of March. All in favour? Absolutely.
Yeah, I missed the last meeting, so apologies. But I did have the pleasure of watching you all back on YouTube last night.
It's the single viewer, so nobody's watching stuff.
I was delayed by about 3 months, so apologies. No, I just wanted to say a couple of things. On 7924, the internal audit plan that was meeting, we resolved to note that a revised internal audit charter was coming to this meeting. And I couldn't see it on the agenda, so I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose that.
I'll put that on the slide, Chair.
Yeah, let's get on it, yeah.
It's a timing issue. We had to take because we have to do a charter for each of the partners, so we have one standard charter and then we change it to the partners, just put the different partners' names in. We had to take it to the operational group last Wednesday, so it missed the cut-off going forward, so it'll be coming to the July meeting.
Just wasn't on that on the resolutions either, so the danger we miss things if we don't put them on the resolution.
Have it within the exit on the part of the section.
Okay. And the last point was resolution 8524, which was just about the working group to do the self-assessment and training. That resolution isn't on the outstanding resolution sheet either. And I could have mentioned it there, but again, I didn't want to miss it. I didn't want us to miss it because we've been talking about training and for quite a long time.
Yeah, well, perhaps not strictly a resolution. It is something we need to track progress against. So maybe that's the best place to put it. Good point. Any other issues, or can we accept them as printed? The one thing I was asked to mention today that I didn't was that we've got committee members on this side of the room and officers on this side of the room, which I've now mentioned. Thank you. Okay, speaking of outstanding resolutions, then item number 5.
Just to confirm, then were they agreed?
Yeah, Councillor Bolton moved approval, and there were no objections. Item number 5 is the outstanding resolutions. So this is to track and review the outstanding resolutions and actions, and Appendix 1 of the report. Everybody's had a copy. Are there any queries or comments? Absolutely, yeah, Mr. Dolman, go ahead.
The meetings we talked about on outstanding audit resolutions, the meeting last week talked about June, and it looks like we've moved it on, and again, it's sort of slightly concerned that it's a bit of a creep in depth, and when will we get that next meeting on internal audit actions in the diary? This is my question.
Sure, good question. So I swear that wasn't a setup. Yeah, we are aware. I agreed to allow the pushback. It's because the department concerned are currently undergoing an Ofsted inspection, which requires all of their attention. It's been postponed until July.
Yes, start of the or end of the school term.
Another good question.
Yeah, well, one for Alison actually. Philip mentioned at the last meeting the employment checks. There was an update which is work has been undertaken and it's been considered. Tell me whether we're doing them or not.
We consider that
And
is
rejected or?
that is something that we can update committee. The chair, if you want to, it's a sensitive area, but
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to update committee in a private session.
So I don't know if you were at the pre-meet, but you've systemically mentioned everything we've mentioned. I'm impressed.
No,
So yes, that is a matter that we can discuss today in committee, but not while we're broadcasting. So we'll take a late notice resolution at the end of the meeting to go outside committee, and we'll discuss that in private due to the sensitive nature. Good point. What else did we discuss in the pre-meet?
Well, I probably could, but I'll get your shout out there.
No, it's good. Thank you very much for those. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Wright.
Page, the last page, the answer committee terms of reference, committee contribution to contribute to the emerging costs of trust. Anything, any updates on that? Just the blanks.
They are
The
blank.
responsible.
No, other than the chairs of the component members, or the audit and governance
Yes.
chairs of the component members have been invited for a discussion and nothing's progressed.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the update. Doesn't feel like it warrants putting it in there.
Okay. Right.
So we'll keep chasing them. Perhaps if we could take that as something we can do afterwards, chase them for
Yeah.
a
Could you do
catch
so,
up.
please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other observations, queries? Councillor Kerr.
We've got 3 points on the page top of. The committee requested that drivers and be big, and it was a comment that has been there was significant movement in the support on. But it's not clear as to whether we are still expecting MPs to be big, or whether has the moment passed and we don't need to talk about it forward, or should they be? I need to get that chair.
Absolutely.
So the last meeting, the MP's meeting was cancelled, where I would have anticipated to do that briefing. However, I think you're right, I think the moment has a little bit narrow in terms of the fact that further information and guidance has been provided only yesterday from NHCLG on the way forward, which I'm sure Mark will give us an update on that, although he's not fully digested it, but things have moved on significantly since. Sorry? It only came out yesterday, exactly. So then, yeah, and I've not read it either. So I think the briefings around the urgency to try and move this on because we weren't seeing any movement, but now we're seeing some movement. I think it can be reassured by that. But do you think, as a committee, do we want to say, right, moment's passed and take this off the sheet, or should it still remain there because otherwise it will be sitting in limbo?
I like to take advice actually, because yes, the moment has passed, but I do still feel like it might be appropriate to keep the MPs informed, and in case the current trajectory doesn't see through to its conclusion. But that doesn't need to be a meeting. That could just be a briefing, an update by letter.
Yeah, I can do it at the quarterly meeting, so I can do an update. I think the original intention was to put some urgency, wasn't it, on NHCLG to be able to get some information out. Now that's come, it's kind of is it just for information sharing to MPs rather than for them to do a course of action? That would be my question.
So how about we resolve the item on the outstanding resolutions, but we ask Alison to just provide an update to our MPs in that meeting. Is that okay? Let's do that then. Any other queries or observations on the outstanding resolutions? Okay, thank you, members. Move on then. The next item on our agenda is item number 6, which is to receive and note an update from external audit. Go ahead when you're ready. I just generally look and see who speaks. But so yeah, thank you, Mark. For the new members, Mark represents our external auditor.
What we will do is when we present our plan, we will understand what the scope of the work is. So we'll factor that in. So what I'm going to say next might be a bit confusing. The statutory environment for external audits and in what's called backlog has now been moved forward with the issuance of something called which is an auditor guidance note, which I've just sent a copy to Alison, which is circulated on the committee. And essentially, it is designed to guide auditors on how to deal with or sets of accounts that have previously been displayed. The guidance is very complicated. I did read it through, and I'm very grateful to have a team of very competent technical specialists who are going to take this and turn it into a piece of readable guidance and application for us. So what we will do is once we've got that information, we're able to apply that to the specific circumstances for Derby City Council. We'll discuss that with Alison and feed that into the audit plan, which will then come to the committee with a timetable and a clear view of how it will apply and what the implications are. Don't really, I prefer not to go into too much more detail around this thing so far because there are, frankly, there are about 20 or 30 different scenarios that seem to come out of it. So trying to find the right ones is a bit tested. But for the committee's benefit, we still have plans in place to compile, complete our work programs. But we are going to have to factor out this guidance affects that. So genuinely, actually, I don't know what the impact is going to be until we work this through.
Yeah, Mr. Stone first, and then Mr. Sunderland.
So I suppose the question is, you've got to digest it, and what are the discussions with yourself and Alison? You still consider that you could be on track to perhaps have your own next year?
We're due to issue the accounts by the end of June deadline, so we made a commitment to do that. I think
We will issue, yeah. I can commit to. I know this is a bit not great, but we will be issuing an opinion before the backstop day. We've digested what this guidance means. I can't tell you what that opinion will look like. Yeah, it could be any number of scenarios that pop up. The guidance even talks about the impact of local organisation. So there's just a lot to work through, I'm afraid.
I suppose for new members as well, we've got previous opinions on previous audits. So what can the results team and to understand what that assurance looks like on those previous audits in terms of them being able to give a full opinion or a disclosed opinion for the 24-25 accounts. But there is the dilemmas and they're the constraints that we're working through.
We issued a statement opinion on 23-24 accounts, basically saying we just didn't do the audit plan. We didn't conclude that they were wrong. We didn't conclude they were right. We just said that we were required by the statutes that you have to issue an opinion by a certain date, no matter what. And because we weren't able to complete all the work in that short time period. So the accounts aren't wrong, they're not right,
does the guidance give dates for which things to be done? Basically clear everything out of the way, without going into detail.
So the backstop dates are still in place by statute, so they will still be in there. I think that there's a piece in the narrative that says this is intended to bring things back on track.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily, given the nuances of some of the case studies that are in there, that doesn't necessarily mean things being
Yeah. I mean, realise things back to some sort of whatever will be in the future.
That's okay.
Can I welcome the fact that we think of a way forward, even if we don't quite know what that way is yet. I'm sure next time we will be given what this item next time on the agenda, and we will be learning more about what it actually means. But if there is anything significant, Chair, that comes up before our next meeting, once this information has been digested, that could be significant, can we ask to be told between meetings, just so that we arrive with some sort of awareness? But hopefully we'll just know where we're going the next time.
I think the next meeting scheduled July, isn't it?
July.
Yes. So we probably will take us to Councillor Care to
To know what's happening.
digest and plan for that. So by all means, you know, if anything significant does come up, I anticipate the July meeting is probably very good timing for us to be able to articulate what that is and what the issues need to deliver on that from both sides as well. Obviously, there could be some significant resource implications.
It just seems to be there might be another next statement out from government. We've had this one, which was later on this meeting. But yeah, we don't know.
July seems about right, but of course, if you're nursing a desire to fill your inbox, then you can subscribe to updates on this from a number of different sources. If anything significant and material comes up, then by all means, just a cascade. That would just be for information, not for decision. Does anybody else have any questions for external audit while you've got the opportunity? Okay, thank you, Mark. The next item on the agenda then is an update on local audit reform. Our objective is to note the contents of the report and the links to further information. We have a speaker, Alison.
Yes, I'll take this one. Although it feels like it's been a little bit superseded by the information that's come from yesterday that Mark's just referred to really. So this really just outlines some of the results of the consultation that was during the autumn and some of the commitments that MHCLG have made for the recovery in April. So a road to recovery has been outlined by MHCLG in the new commitments for audit reform in April. MHCLG announced plans to overhaul the local audit system in England, and that was, as you know, was against a backlog of a significant number of unaudited accounts, 918 unaudited accounts in September 2023. So, you know, as we know, a significant issue facing the system. We do also know that on the back of this, this led to the whole of the government accounts for 2023 being disclaimed in 2024. So, you know, a real big issue nationally. So the report identifies some of the outcomes of those commitments, and the strategy included establishing a local audit office, which is the LAO, to streamline the audit processes and to ensure value for money. It made a commitment to simplify financial reporting, and we'll wait and see what that looks like, bearing in mind the complications associated with local government reporting and statement of accounts. The LAO commitment to enhance audit capacity and separate some pension funds accounts from the main accounts, and the reform aimed ultimately to reduce the disclaimed opinions that we've seen across the sector and to improve local body audit relationships. On the plus side, the government has allocated 49 million to help councils address the audit backlogs, with funds released based on the compliance with the statutory requirements. So that's in effect achieving the backstop dates, which is why we will publish our accounts by the end of June, and the SARS will form an opinion by the backstop date in February, because there's funding linked to that. Whether that funding is adequate enough to be able to support the resources in the audit firms and within local authorities as well, we will remain to see that. There was an additional grant of 15 million as well distributed in March of this year to assist with some of those audit costs, and we received £50,000 of that to contribute to those audit fees. And there is a link in the report to the full consultation response in response to the local audit reform. But as I said, it's probably superseded a little bit by the information that's been released yesterday.
Thank you. Any queries or comments, Councillor Kerr?
There's a bullet point in the school consultant that one says mandating audit committees. Does it mean requirement and mandate has to do something?
I think it mandates, I think they're already mandated. I think there's a mandate to have independent committee members on that committee, which we already do.
So it's to require. Yes. So it's to require. Yes. And the link at the bottom, this would be an active link.
Okay.
Mine's not working. Are you saying that they're not working on the website? If anybody else has trouble with that link, then we can take the same approach. Any other queries or comments? In that case, we'll note the report. Thank you, members. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 8, which is to note the contents of a report for contract waivers. We do have Teresa Gerard. Thank you for coming to talk to us about this.
Morning, everybody. First time I've attended this meeting, so it's really great to meet some of you in person and put faces to names, etc. So before I start, and I'm aware we've got new people in the room, so I just wanted to explain a little bit about the content and context of this report and why this report contains a full year's worth of data. So normally this report comes twice yearly, but because there was a gap in the recruitment of the head of procurement, myself, the report for the first part of 2024 wasn't submitted. So what I've done is prepared a report for a full year's worth of data, so there's no gap in terms of data governance. So, and also I just thought it might be worth giving a bit of a context around what a procurement waiver is and what it means. So a procurement waiver is required where there is a deviation from the normal contract procedural rules that's established by the council. And where deviations are necessary, these are normally assessed are risk assessed and value assessed. So the report for January 24 to December 24 shows that there was 108 waiver requests submitted, 97 of those being unavoidable and 11 of those being avoidable. And so I just wanted to put some context around that as well. So for example, where we perhaps put a tender out or an opportunity out and we receive no compliant bids, it may mean we have to do a direct award of contract. And in those circumstances, that's an unavoidable waiver. We haven't got an option. We've gone through the process governed by the contract procedural rules, but we then have to deviate because we've had no alternative. And there are also situations where we're in urgent circumstances where we may need to direct award a contract as well. So in terms of avoidable waivers, these are where, again, so we may have followed contract procedural rules and we may have resulted in a tender, but for whatever reason, and these could be various reasons, driving value for money, or we're in the midst of a tender process, but we need to get something in place quite quickly, that would be classed as an avoidable waiver. So that's put a little bit of context around this report and what it tries to cover. So I'll open up for questions.
Quickly to start with then, the two significant material to budget are the highways work and the educational placements.
Yeah.
I take it that while avoidably dealt with at the time, they are now dealt with within the contract.
So I did pull some notes together because I thought they might be the two that were looked at. So the highways framework, for example, now I know when that was awarded, there was a procurement going through the process, and it looks a lot of money, the waiver. But just to give you some context, that contract or the framework we subsequently awarded for that was actually worth 35 million. So in context, that period of time while we were undertaking quite a lengthy procurement process, a £500,000 temporary measure put in place is not a lot of money in when you take it in the wider context. So that's that one. And then, yeah. And then the other one around the, sorry, which was the other one you? Yeah, again, this was a requirement where we have got a provider in place, and it made sense to award, to extend that contract and carry on with that particular provider to deliver that element of the service, because to switch providers wouldn't make sense when you've got service continuity to consider. But what would happen, that might be a compliant contract modification, and then subsequently when that contract's relet, it would form part of that entire service. I can't obviously comment on that. I can find out and feedback, but yes, I would imagine that there would be an element of, yes, we need to do this, but that consideration may be, well, we need to get this in place quite quickly, and to go through a procurement process may take a long period of time to go through that. And if you've got an incumbent provider who has already gone through those due diligence checks, they've already been financially vetted, and they're delivering a good service for us, we might say, because of the contract period, we'll tag it on to what they're delivering for us now, and then when we go out for that contract again, it will form part of that whole contract.
It looks as well from the narrative of all it's around the continuation of a placement until year 14.
Yeah.
So there will be an individual child continuation education that would have to be considered.
Yeah, and where you've got familiarity with the incumbent provider, there are valid reasons for continuing with that provider.
Of the contracts detailed in the avoidable waivers, are there any now that are still being dealt with as a waiver rather than under contract?
Well, we've got the waiver end date, so when those we would look at those end dates, and without going and checking each one, I can't give a definitive answer, but yes, a waiver should be a temporary measure, and when that waiver comes to an end, there should be a compliant procedure, or some of them, if so the waiver might come to an end date, but if that waiver is right, we're going to incorporate this into this contract, then yes, that would be a compliant process. No, because some of them may be in contract. So the example I've just given, the one we've just discussed, that contract was under contract. Yeah. What the waiver is explaining is that we've decided to extend that, we've decided to put more requirements into that contract, and the waiver is making you aware that we've made that decision to incorporate that additional requirement into an existing contract.
Last one for me then, on the catering purchase for the arena.
Yeah.
Whilst maybe outside of contract, I take it that we're still maintaining full traceability for the supply chain.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, I've hogged that one. Members, Mr. Sunderland.
Just on principle, really, the
I'm relatively new in post, and one of the things I'm currently doing, not just as a requirement of your observation, because I totally agree, it is very, very low, that £10,000. One of the other things I am looking at is that our contract procedural rules in general, so a general update to those because of the changes in regulation around Procurement Act. So, yeah, so those thresholds will be examined, and we will perhaps make some suggestions around changes where we think those changes don't lose any visibility or compliance. Yeah.
They will need cabinet approval as well.
Yeah.
On thresholds for waivers.
So these will probably be there already, though, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, £10,000 just seems
It is.
rather low. I don't know when it's like increase, if ever, but
It is a while.
I think the point has resonated and will be taken offline. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Repton.
right, £10,000, small change to the two items. I'd like to get a bit more information about. Those two items amount to almost £1 million of awardable waivers, and that's the 457,000 waiver for urgent plans and labour in order to carry out essential highways and maintenance work. That's on page 25, and then on page 26, the 396,000 people services would have been placed under contract TD 1306 educational placement until year 14. Just a bit more information about that. I think for committee members, I think we're all curious about two waivers which are meant to be avoidable for an actual £1 million.
Yeah, so I appreciate we've had a little bit of information, but perhaps for Councillor Repton's benefit, could we just expand a little bit on those 2 points?
So the highways one was, as I explained, is we were going through a procurement process for a framework of different providers. And to give some context, that's a £35 million contract. So a £35 million framework. So that period of time while we were getting that compliant framework in place, we've got some urgent requirements that we needed to deliver. So we appointed a contractor to deliver those requirements during that period while we were going through that procurement activity. So in context, £500,000, which I appreciate is a lot of money, but in the context of a £35 million contract, it's yeah, there will be. Obviously, we're working with contractors all the time, and we will have previous experience of working with these contractors, not just in terms of their compliance, but their quality, their ability to meet our requirements. So we do build that history around our suppliers from the activities we do with them day to day. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and so you're on. Yeah. So again, this was where we've got young people who are in a placement and needed additional services. We've got a compliant contract with an incumbent supplier. We identified these additional requirements, but instead of going out to the market and bringing in a new provider who's got no relationship with those young people, we awarded it to the supplier who was delivering a good service for us, was known to these young people, and could continue to deliver that service compliantly.
It sounds like whilst there are risk acceptances in play, my language, sorry, I know it's not the council's language, it's fair to say that none of these suppliers have circumnavigated due diligence or proper selection and boarding processes.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that process is going through an approvals process for that activity, and that approvals process is signed off by myself, it's signed off by finance from a budget perspective, and it's also signed off by the head of department. And where it meets certain criteria, as we've just said, it will be reported to Cabinet as well. So it does go through a quite stringent due diligence process before we make that decision to make it a waiver. All right.
Any other questions or thank you for the update, and may I say we can look forward to some more regularity on the
Yeah,
update
absolutely.
going forward. Now you're in post.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
very much.
I'm gonna give my apologies now.
You have to stay for the whole thing. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you very much.
So we're noting that, members, and the next item on our agenda is to receive the internal audit report for 24-25 and the head of an internal audit opinion.
Thank you very much, Chair.
As you please.
Just to give a bit of background for those that are new to the committee, the public sector internal audit standards, which have been in place for many years now, require me to, as head of internal audit, to deliver an annual opinion on the City Council's governance, risk and control framework, and also as part of that to put in an annual report of all the work that we've done. Those who are at the meeting in March will know that the public sector internal audit standards have been replaced by the global internal audit standards from the 1st of April 2025. So all the work that Hannah's now overseeing and her opinion at the end of 25-26 year will be based on the global internal audit standards. Not a great deal of difference, but probably more in there for us to consider. But certainly, as auditors, this report is like the pinnacle for us. This is what we work all year to do. It pulls together, the annual report itself pulls together the contents of the progress reports that we bring to you each quarter and pulls everything together there. From that, that's only partly how I arrive at the opinion. The other parts are sort of attending various meetings, stuff like that, talking to Alison, a Section 151 officer, talking to the monitoring officer, talking to the chief exec, getting an opinion out, and other things going on. So you get an overall opinion of how everything's working within the City Council. So that all feeds in as well. At the end of the day, I can give one of 4 assurance levels, either substantial, reasonable, limited, or no assurance. For the Derby City Council in 24-25, I've given reasonable assurance based on the fact that there are the governance, risk management, and control framework is generally working well and is effective. There are still areas in there, as we report through from time to time, that need improvement. So I'm never going to get that substantial level while there's areas that are still got areas for improvement. Biggest concern I've raised several times and is featured in the annual report as well is responses to recommendations and that type of thing. And the one thing that did please me very much from 24-25 was audit and governance role in certainly through when you have the place directorate come in, that did certainly influence our responses to a number of recommendations, and so they can't come down. What I've done in the annual report is broken it down so there's 2 substantial recommendations in there that these are the key areas that are still outstanding, and they're in around social care, and also drawn together all the figures, etc., so you can see overall how everything's fitting together. One thing I will say is that I have to report to you that during the year, in my opinion, we were compliant with the public sector internal audit standards. I've got no reason to think we weren't. We had an external assessment in 2022, which had us in one of the best audit sections that they've actually done at that point in time. And we've not changed any processes other than bringing in a new audit management system, which has had its teething problems. I mean, we would like to be able to say to you that the progress reports that we're going to be bringing to you, or have been bringing to you since we had it in, were generated by this. Unfortunately, they haven't. We've had to dual run with our old audit management system, which has caused 1 or 2 problems. And as certainly for the audit staff, having to input their times into 2 audit management systems is not the best of things. So it's a bit more time consuming. But Hannah's been working very closely with the developers on that, and we are told that there's a progress report waiting to be tested.
Yeah, in the system, notification this morning, so I'm testing that at the request of the system. Hopefully it will work. If not, I'll be able to get back to them.
at the July meeting, you may get a system generated.
Exciting.
But yes, I think the key thing that the message to get across is about the fact that I'm able to give reasonable assurance to the Audit and Governance Committee and to senior management on the governance, risk and control framework that I was to council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Acton.
Yeah, looking at the first page, page 992, just looking at the ones where we've got completion rates, and so we see most of them are quite good, 100%, etc. But Derby and Derbyshire Waste Treatment Centre is 0. Can we have a little bit more background perhaps on that? Then there are a couple of other things as well might be worth looking at. Housing standards is at 10%. I think myself and the committee might be interested, but whether we should be concerned about that or not.
Question.
Pick up the waste treatment plant. That was the subject of a special meeting that we held a month or so ago. We're just, as auditors, at the moment, we are waiting for instruction.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that's why it's at 0%, and we can't do anything yet until things are decided. The housing one again was something we've done some work at Derby Homes. We're trying to do the same here as the council, and that's been held up. We're in negotiations with management at the moment as to how to best proceed with that. It's all been scoped out. Unfortunately, we're just waiting on managers to get back to us with information. Then we can move on from that 10%.
Thanks very much, Richard. Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Yes, I think for me, it's probably what items are missing here. I should know why particular themes, people, place, etc., and the items within these themes. What is missing here, particularly with respect to people and place? There's nothing about community safety and the efficacy of that in auditing terms. We have a situation in Derby where we had, over the last month or so, several stabbings, rising antisocial behaviour, rising violence. We've had a murder, as you know. And this is particularly bad. I suppose what I'm trying to do is to bring the human element into the bureaucracy of this. And there's nothing here that tells me how the extent to which we are discharging our duties as a council, our statutory duty to keep our people safe. So I suppose I'm asking that perhaps one of the areas we need to look at going forward is community safety. And when Alison meets with our brilliant local MPs, perhaps the issue of escalating concerns about community safety is discussed with them. So I'm asking, please, that community safety, rising violence in the city is audited. The efficacy, how effectively are we able to keep our people safe?
Well, I thank you for your point and your passionate delivery. What I'm confused about, and perhaps you could expand thought, is what's the framework that we're auditing against? I agree there's a statute and a mandate, but what if I said to Richard and his team, I go out and audit public safety? I imagine that would blow their minds.
Well, I'm sure we can break it down into particular areas as such, but in response to the fact that there are challenges, one is constantly being told that resources are not available to actually address concerns. So do we not have the resources to ensure that we have staff, agencies on the ground to protect our
council staff, not policing staff?
Council, obviously.
Perhaps someone else is more capable of seeing through to the result than me, Alison.
Yeah, just comment on that. I'm not so sure, but I agree with you, Chair. Maybe that's been very difficult for audit to be able to assess that, and whether that's something that maybe we go through the scrutiny forum in terms of scrutiny reviews around that. That may be a better place to test that, those questions that you've got, Councillor Wright.
I don't know if Richard's got any comments around whether he'd be able to, or Hannah, whether he'd be able to audit that, but I would imagine that's a really difficult thing
Well,
to
that's why
audit.
I also said that perhaps I don't have a full understanding of these things and the item below those things and how they actually map onto
It just feels
what I
probably
see.
a scrutiny work programme package maybe more relevant.
Okay, yeah, there's the two offers for you, Councillor Wright. One is that Jack's kindly agreed to pick this up with you after the meeting. And from myself, if you want to express to me your concerns in writing, I'll forward them on to relevant authorities in the police and the scrutiny for them to take up the baton with it. It's a good point, and I love your passion, and something should be done. Just not sure it falls under our terms of reference. Thanks for raising it. Are there any other queries? Yeah, Mr. Sunderland.
Yeah, just a detail thing here. 411, 41 audits completed, 22 reasonable minors with insurance. One other, what about the other 9?
What the ones that are now? But they're ones that we don't actually give an assurance rating for them. They're assurance rating areas like grant claims and that type of stuff. So we don't always. Yeah, if you look on the table of assurance provided, it's all broken down there.
On the page 12 of 19, the evaluated adequate what's the scale on the left-hand side?
That's the actual number of evaluated controls.
So there's a number of controls. So you've gone through 259 adequate controls, 139 partial.
53 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've evaluated 451 altogether.
Yeah, sorry, just trying to check where it came from. Yeah. That was it.
Mr. Stone.
Richard, thank you for the report. It's a really good report. In my concern, what's on page 16 of the report, which is around the two recommendations to residential care.
Yeah.
We don't seem to have any time frame for implementation. And although the second point, which is number 8, the last update of the property, we're still waiting for supporting evidence for that. So that's probably a reason we continue to do something.
Yeah, it's one of these that we picked up when you look at people's direction, special meetings. The problem is the old system fires out regular requests for updates on all the recommendations, but we're reliant on people responding to us. If they don't respond, that's the problem. And on both of these again, although they responded on let's say recommendation 8 and said, oh yes, we've implemented it, but being auditors, we don't accept their word they've implemented until they can actually provide us with evidence that they've done so. So that's what we're waiting for on that one, and the other one we just haven't had a response for yet. What will happen with the new audit management system that Hannah's rolling out?
Sorry, I was just going to contradict you slightly. We did actually get some updates on the residential care recommendations this week. I've just asked for a revised action date of so it's the time issue in terms of when we produce this report and when there's updates.
Thank you. But yeah, so the new system gives service directors access. They can actually see all the recommendations that are outstanding in there, so they can follow things up. That's being rolled out now, isn't it?
Because it seems to me a recurring theme when we see some of these recommendations, that sometimes the time frame is we get the description of what is going to happen. I think often certainly the time that I've been here, we don't see that time frame. We're looking at smart targets. So I think if the officers can kind of reflect that when they are kind of updating, it would really be helpful for these things.
The new system takes care to a degree of that.
So we've got in the system there are opportunities to record where revised action dates have been moved on a number of times. So that's sometimes really useful.
We'll receive information about that.
Yeah, and well, at the moment we aren't necessarily pulling that through into your reports, but it is something that senior officers can see. So when Alison, for example, is monitoring recommendations in her area, you can see her officers continue to review recommendations on and good times, and it really is affecting Alison and then we can also those officers to see what's happening.
Yeah. think on the back of Mr. Stone's query, it would be useful if committee could see if people keep tipping the dates on.
Potentially, but referring back to the fact that we just had the new progress report available for testing,
Unavailable.
that isn't part of that template, and we'd have to go back and ask for another version of that template. So
Okay.
it's something we can.
Future development request
Yeah,
at a
and
convenient
I'd,
time.
yeah,
Right, okay.
I'd rather
Time our run. We don't want to incur fees for that, Mr. Stone.
Before we ask the service.
I mean, just to give some assurance, this is under my remit because it's finance of the residential care system, and it is something that we absolutely are investing a lot of time and effort on this. I appreciate the report is probably a little bit outdated with some of the work, the updates that we've done recently. In terms of the new system as well, it's been rolled out, it's been deployed to me and the other directors, and it's absolutely brilliant to be able to see at, you know, the touch of a button in terms of our, in our management team meetings, to be able to go through outstanding recommendations and put pressure on the heads of service to be able to deliver that, which is something that we've not had in the past because emails have gone directly to heads of service and there's been a little bit of a lack of strategic oversight in terms of accountability and deliverability, but it's working and it works very well. So I'm hoping that audit will see, the committee will see an improvement in some of those recommendations, and you know, maybe we'll go for significant assurance next year as well with the reduction of some of those recommendations. But I've got every confidence that the rollout in that system will help us be able to, you know, deliver and some improvement in this area. But these are mine, and I am investing quite a lot of time and resources to be able to move these forward.
I love that that's a standing item on your agendas, and I
Yes.
appreciate you taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and the other directors are as well. And because the system's like, you know, you can go into the system live with your management team and question, update, and all of those things. So, yeah, it's brilliant.
Any other queries or comments? Anybody disagree with Richard's opinion? Mr. Don.
No, I don't disagree with it. Two questions and a suggestion. Richard, last year, because the definitions have changed, haven't they? So
Yes.
last year, I think it was satisfactory system of governance, risk and control, and established reasonable assurance. It's gone from 3 to 4 choices. So within that, knowing that, is this year the same as last year in your mind, or better or worse?
Worse. So I would say it's improving. The direction of travel is going in the right direction.
That's good for us to know. And the other thing that we've talked about a lot is you put a point in your report last year about there's an increase in the level of non-engagement, which isn't in this year's report. Are we saying that the engagement's improved, or it's the same, or got worse?
It's patchy, but certainly there's as Alison was saying, the fact we've rolled out the system now, that's going to change everything anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's going forward, I hope. But
Yeah.
it's where we are now.
The biggest problem we have is, and this is not just with Diversity Council, but across the partnership as well, is there's still a misunderstanding of internal audit roles. We still get people, they were coming to audit you saying, what have I done wrong? And they're on the back foot straight away, and they don't want to engage. But I've talked to a lot of other heads of audit around the country, and they're all experiencing the same problems now. It's just a world with local government now. You know, officers are under so much pressure. It is difficult as well. We're another pressure on them trying to audit them, and it is causing a lot of problems across the country. But and we see across the partnership, you know, some councils are better than others at responding. But I wouldn't say Derby and not the worst by a long way. But yeah, there's still areas where we are looking to get, you know, more engagement. Sometimes it's, you know, when we're trying to set audits up, and it takes a bit of time. The biggest one, of course, is when the draft report goes out, and we try and give 4 weeks between the draft report going out and getting the final one out. So, you know, we're chasing it, and sometimes there's a longer delay there where people say, oh, suddenly change their mind on things. The worst thing, of course, is when they just agree to things, we do the final report, and then they come back and they'll say to committee, for example, oh, well, in hindsight, perhaps we shouldn't have accepted that, we should have looked at it, or didn't accept that recommendation as it stood. We accepted the issue, but we felt that we could perhaps do it in a different way. And that's something we've been trying to get across to, certainly to corporate leadership team, go there And the chief exec is very vocal on wanting recommendations sorted out. And one of his statements to his directors has been, you know, make sure that your managers are considering what's in there before they agree to things. But that's a key issue for us as well. So if that message gets across and is, you know, we see that next year, things will definitely improve.
Yeah, it won't just be about the new reporting system, it is about the culture, but people that you're there to help, not to kill them, actually.
That's not unique to this council either. I've seen many organisations move away from the word audit for that reason, towards the assurance. Incidentally.
I think the fact that we've seen quite a lot of consultancy work that comes to audit as well means that a lot of managers are seeking audit as, you know, as a help, as input into projects or areas that they've got particular issues or development or systems improvement or things like that. But we've seen quite a lot of that. So it is work in progress, but I think it's an improving journey.
Next year's report will be a laugh.
Yes. Something to sort of aspire to.
And then my final was a suggestion. But you know, the QAIP that we have is that we don't often go through in detail. The improvement plan that which is people are doing. A lot of the items are exactly the same update from 6, 7, 8 months. Certainly the first 5 or 6 are, and it might be helpful when we look at this to have a column which is updated since last report. So which if it's blank, we know there's nothing changes, and maybe a column around what the target date is, because otherwise it's a little bit dead. We look at it and just flick through it, and it'd be good to get some more, whether it's traction, but a little bit more understanding of what's sticking and when things might be delivered.
Are we willing and able to extend that report?
We can do that. I mean, the real reason for it, of course, is the new global internal audit standards coming, took up some time, and of course the audit management system. So that's what we're focusing on. So the other stuff was sort of part. But yeah, we can deal with that.
Just a thought. I won't kill you on that. No, I won't kill Harry on it.
Yeah, therefore I'm just agreeing. I'm
disagree everything.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing everything and blow our hands up.
Whatever report you want. Good question, thank you. Are there any other queries or comments on internal audit? Okay, thanks members. In which case we can move on to the next item on the agenda. Alison's kindly prepared for us a review of the effectiveness of internal audit. This is item number 10.
This is the impact of a committee request on the self-assessment that was carried out in February 2020, where they asked the question around effectiveness of my opinion in terms of effectiveness of internal audit. Just before we start the discussion, I'm just checking everybody's okay with, Chris is okay with the internal audit being in the room while we discuss this report. We did discuss this after we felt that we're all mature enough to be able to do that, but if anybody felt uncomfortable with that, then we can ask Hannah and Richard to remove themselves while we discuss this report.
I wouldn't be able to say anything different because we're here, but in terms of you wanting to answer that, you might want to say something different if you ask a challenge. So I think it's up to you.
I feel very comfortable with them being in the room. That's my view.
Any other views? Right, feel free to stay or go.
Why not? This is last week. Yeah.
We'll see him again because he's
I'm still around.
flexible retirement. He's doing 2 days leading the partnership, CMAP partnership. So
Let's see him floating around doing.
I'll be an observer at the next meeting.
We'll be better off for it. We'll have 2 viewers next month.
So the Local Government Act 1972 discharges delegates responsibility for local internal audit to myself, the Director of Finance, and it requires those audit regulations require audits to evaluate risk management and control and governance processes following public sector standards. And the City Council's internal audit is provided, as we know, by the Central Midlands Audit Partnership, and in my view aligns with all of those standards. CMAP, the the audit partnership was established in 2012. It's a collaboration amongst several partners within the region, within Derbyshire, but outside of Derbyshire as well. And we've got a contractual arrangement to extend that until March 2030. So when the report established recognised as March 2025, but we have agreed a new partnership agreement that is just going through legal process for signing and sealing, and that will take us into the partnership for 2030. The partnership is crucial for providing independent assurance to the council, so it's really important that we maintain that independence for our internal audits. And the internal audit contribute to the annual audit, obviously give an annual audit opinion, and contribute to the council's annual governance statement, which are really, really important governance aspects to the organisation. In terms of audit, they've got access to all directorates within the council, and we do commission them to do internal audit of around about 1,200 days per annum at a cost of around about £500,000. That enables Richard and his team to provide those assurances that we need to establish effective assurance. In the report, it identifies the effectiveness of internal audit, and that's assessed through various factors that you'll see broken down within the report, including staffing, the consideration around staffing, compliance around standards and the quality of the audit work that's undertaken. The CMAC staff are highly qualified with ongoing professional development and succession planning in place, and that is to maintain a high quality of service. And I think as the partnership have been assured through a lot of the changes that we've had recently in terms of Richard retiring and his focus on the partnership and the success of the succession planning arrangements that the CMAP operation have had in place to be able to fill some of those critical roles and see some promotion and training within the internal staff. So it's really, really positive that hasn't left any significant gaps within the audit, and we're seeing progression and succession and people being rewarded for that investment. So that's a really, very positive place to be. There's ongoing professional development in place, and that maintains a high quality of service. The partnership has recently been expanded in 2024 to add some new partners and clients, and it continues to focus on leadership and succession. So when we considering the extension of the partnership at CMAC, we do ensure that those current partners, that we don't set the partnership up to be victims of its own success in terms of it's able to manage those new clients, and we've got resources to be able to do that. As you know, audit planning is risk-based, and we do get quarterly updates, ensuring alignment with the council's priorities and flexibility within the audit plan to address those emerging risks, which we do evoke quite regularly. CMAC's quality assurance programme ensures compliance with audit standards and identifies improvement opportunities as well. And regular reporting to Audit and Governance Committee keeps us all informed of audit progress and the implementation of those recommendations. So despite some of the challenges that we've had in engagement and recommendation implementations, effort is ongoing to improve in these areas with yourselves, and we're actively addressing those issues. And CMAC's use of data analytic enhances the audit efficiency and effectiveness, supporting management in resolving issues across the organisation. So in my overall opinion, as identified in the report, my opinion is that the audit partnership provides a robust internal audit service to the council and continually adapts to meet the organisation's needs. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Any queries or comments, members?
It just takes some time to understand how the partnership works, because I don't fully understand who all the partners are, and whether the partnership is, whether we're subsidising other people or whether everybody's paying their way, all the different stuff.
everyone pays the wage, we all buy audit days into the partnership, so that's what gets delivered.
I don't know which other authorities, so other authorities paying X amount of money, the work they get will not exceed X.
And Richard might be able to comment on the other partners.
I'm just interested how many there are, how it works,
how the model
and
works.
who controls it, and who runs the thing. I've never quite
The
gathered.
partnership is hosted by Derbyshire Council, so all the staff are technically employees of Derbyshire Council. They're on the payroll there, although some of the staff that have transferred in from other partners have kept their terms and conditions at that authority. The governance of it, there is a partnership board, which is made up of one member from each partner. So the chair attends and represents Derbyshire Council. Underneath that sits the operational group, which is where you find the Section 151 officers, or in one case a monitoring officer, but it's mostly Section 151 officers. And under that is the head of partnership, which is me, and I report through to them. So that's how the governance works on that. We've currently got 9 partners and 2 external clients. The 9 partners are Derbyshire Council and South Derbyshire, who are the original partners. We've then got Derby Homes, Amber Valley, Ashfield, Nuneaton Bedworth, North Warwickshire, and the East Midlands Combined County Authority. And Derbyshire Fire and Rescue. And the 2 external clients are Rugby Borough Council and Erewash Borough Council. So, and we provide, what happens then is that we have a 5-year partnership agreement, which the partner, as Alison was saying, which is currently, the current one is going through its signing and sealing at the moment. Within that, the partnership board agrees a contribution from each partner based on the service that they require. So that's our income. We get income in from external clients, and then sometimes we will get asked to do additional work as well, so that also brings income in. Yeah, there's a partnership rate, and then there's an external rate. There's partnership, if partners want work doing, they get charged at a certain rate. External clients get charged at a slightly higher rate, plus with travel costs in there, you have to go out to Rugby and places like that. That's the setup of it.
What happens to the
Surplus stroke deficit, we have a reserve for that, and that's reported on, so the operational group are aware of what that is, and that's reported to the board each year as well, what the level of reserve is at the moment, and that stands at about several 100,000 at the moment. So we need that for certain things, such as and if we need to recruit extra staff for anything, or if there's any retirements that are going to have a cost to them, those type of things are funded out of that. So yeah, so the reserve is, I mean, the reserve has been quite high, and what happens if the reserve gets too high is there's a payment made back to the individual partners based on their contribution over the years. Yeah. Such would the reserve has never been, it's always been in surplus. We have made a deficit in 1 year. That's all. Yeah.
Clear for you then?
I've never quite understood quite how it works.
And I think being part of the partnership offers us some resilience as well, in terms of having that bigger bank of staff to
I can see from a small local authority, it's very beneficial, very helpful for them. I wasn't quite sure what was in it for Derbyshire Council.
We're aware of what's happened with other partnerships. Certainly when you take on county councils, which some partnerships have, you have to be very, very careful, because if it suddenly come in and try and take on a county council as well and dwarf the partnership. City Council has always been there from the start. We have had approaches from other councils. We haven't accepted every single applicant for joining the partnership. There are some where we said we didn't think it was in our interests for them to join. That's a decision decision I take to the operational board, and they will make that decision there as to whether they feel it needs to move up to. We only ever used to take to the partnership board those that we would like to join the partnership to get their approval.
So what's it for the city council? You get a workforce who are considering lots of different areas. If next year it's different sort of organisations and different procedures, so they can, from a professional point of view, you're not confined by one payroll system or one set of systems.
There's economies of scale in this as well, because you think across with 9 partners, quite a few use similar sort of systems. So from an audit point of view, if we're sort of, so the payroll system at Derby is also used by Nuneaton, so we've got experience of that. And there's certain other good factors for them as well. With EMCA joining, for example, that's a developing authority. That's going to get bigger, but there is, there's crossover between them and City Council because services will transfer to EMCA. So that again is, and certain members of the audit committee are actually on the audit committee at EMCA. So, and from our point of view, from the CMAP point of view, it's good continuity as well because we know the members on there as well. So it's an interesting. What we've got to be careful of is not getting too big.
The city council is secure in its organisation. It's not in any way losing out in any way, either financially or organisationally or governance-wise. So that was my concern.
Personally, I've only got complimentary things to say, including the competitive rate.
Okay, thanks much.
Councillor Tim.
I was just going to ask from paragraph 416, which I think is needed in the extra sentence here. Does any resource and consideration for effective delivery just in point of meetings? Any issues or concerns? And I think from the discussion we've just had, one of the things that we might have had if it was only our internal audit would have been a greater challenge of progression and funding staff changing, which is easier to manage in a larger group. But have there been any resource and considerations that which have been not obviously easily resolved?
No, all of the audit plans have always been met. The audit plan that we put forward within the days that we've set as an organisation. There was and there have been some deficiencies in terms of the IT audit that's been identified within the report, but I think with the fact that we've got a bigger pool of auditors, we've been able to deploy some of that talent in terms of the gaps that we've got in that skills across others within the partnership.
I just have to share that we've taken on some more partners recently. We are increasing the staffing establishments of the partnership, and being the partnership seems to mean that we do get more interest. I mean, it's one of the things my colleagues around the country complain about is fine trying to get trainee auditors in, but trying to get qualified audit staff in is difficult. We've just put out for 2 group auditors and had 10 applications. So, from what Hannah's been telling me, there are a good number that are interviewable. So that's
good. Any more questions or comments for Alison on the opinion? Okay, in which case we'll note the opinion and move to the next item on the agenda, which is item 11. This is to consider and approve the internal audit plan for Q2, noting that the revised internal audit charter and mandate has been drafted and will be coming to us for review next month.
Introducing this plan, we have independently considered the risks of the council and the commissions, considered the discussions that we've had at this committee in areas that you would potentially like us to audit, and we've also looked at consulting with senior officers, making sure that the time is right for undertaking some of these pieces of work as well. We've also sought to try and ensure alignment with the aims and the goals of the council as well in developing this kind of work. Because the plans are a space even, it does mean that we are conforming with the global internal audit standards as well. So it's a box there. Delivering this proposed plan of work will help me in forming my opinion when that is due for the 2026 financial year. It's also going to be providing assurance to this committee and to management as well on the adequacy of governance, risk and control in the organisation. So the Quarter 2 plan is set out in Appendix 1. Also included in Appendix 1, as well as what we want to do in Quarter 2, are areas where I'll also be taking assurance that will cut across the whole organisation in the whole year. And there's also potential areas of coverage in the remainder of 25-26 and the first part of 26-27, and that we're also considering undertaking, so that's in the plan section. You've obviously already picked up on the audit charter plan, so I won't go over that again. But what we're obviously asking is that if you consider this report and approve the internal audit plan for Quarter 2, and to note that the revised charter and mandate will be coming forward to the committee at its next meeting. I've taken questions on the content of the report.
Thanks, Hannah. Members, any queries or comments? Off lightly. Oh, just the one, yeah.
Yeah, not for quarter 2, but the waste management synthetic things isn't in there at all for 3, 4 and Q1. I just wondered whether it should be. It's something that it might not be designed yet, or we know what we're doing, but should it not be actually on there if it is?
So it was put forward in the Quarter 1 plan, so it's there in our intention to undertake activity where we can start a bit, yeah, based on what Richard had said earlier, that we're working for that instruction about what we're actually getting involved with. So we have got, we have got an intention to start.
No, that's fine.
You'll see it in the progress
Yeah,
report.
that's cool. Thanks, Hannah.
Okay.
The contingency, if you don't use the contingency, what do you do with it? And section 106, section 106, what about other section 106? Do you not do the whole thing?
But potentially we could. I mean, that 106 one actually came out of a comment that Councillor Carey made at a previous meeting about that particular concern. So that's why that's gone in. But yeah.
So if you're doing 106,
yeah,
you might as well do all aspects
yeah,
of it at the same time. There's no one picking out one little bit of it.
yeah, no, potentially, we have done that.
Quite an extension in scope, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so that was more.
It's a very critical issue, isn't it? Because if you put 106 as a one, you might be potentially losing it, or you're making best use.
But you also might lose the concentration on public spaces.
Well, it's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, we could look to do sort out piece of work just looking at open spaces, or we could widen it up.
I'm just thinking about consistency. It's best to do the whole thing in one go rather than little groups of open spaces, one bit housing the next, something else the next. So anyway,
You could take the recommendation, but I expect with quite an extension in scope, that'll need some careful consideration before it gets included.
Yeah, and it's something I'd like to pick up with the responsible officers as well, to see how the undertaking of that piece of work.
Sort of in terms of clarity, the issue in terms of, it isn't actually section 106 in terms of payment, but it's the expectation within a planning approval that public open space will be delivered for the city to transfer over. So it will be delivered through section 106. But my understanding is that the land around the majority of the quarters will be adopted by the council. So it's open space adoption rather than
The clarity. Okay, are there any more queries on that? Okay, in which case we'll note the report, thank you, and the charter next month. Moving on then to item number 12, which is the counter fraud annual report, which I believe Richard even.
We've got Thomas with me, the council.
We've got a double act on fraud.
Yes. Yes.
Well, when you're ready.
Senior fraud investigator.
Lovely.
Heads up the.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Just to run through this is, I mean, again, just bring to your attention what's happened with the counter fraud in world of counter fraud and the framework over the last 24, 25 year. Starting off with the National Fraud Initiative, which is an area that is a mandatory area for councils and has been since 1998. Again, what we get out of that is a debatable thing, but it's something we pay a nice subscription to it, so we do that. And As you can see here, we've got the 24-25 number of matches, but we've also put in there the previous year 2022-23 matches, so you can see what's happening. This was an exercise that was originally brought in by the Audit Commission and has now transferred to the Cabinet Office, and the Cabinet Office still see the relevance of all of this. It all came about from many years ago. The London team against fraud were finding a lot of cross-boundary stuff, and it came to there was no idea that data matching across the country would help reduce the level of fraud. You're never going to reduce the level of fraud. In fact, there's always some new way of doing various things, and otherwise Tracy would out of a job if there wasn't any. But that's the National Fraud Initiative again. We're working on that, and that'll be the keep us going for now until the next one, which I think will be in about 18 months' time. They're every 2 years, the National Fraud Initiative. The next section is on the work of the counter fraud team. I'm going to hand over to Tracy so she can have a quick some background to watch for the next, particularly the figures. Tracy's team, they're self-funding based on the savings they make for the council, as you can see. There's hefty sums there. So I'll hand over to Tracy.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. And so our focus remains on investigating, preventing and detecting fraud. And I think you'll see from the appendix on there with the results that we've had for the last year. There's certainly they're good results in terms of what we've had in previous years as well. Slightly less properties recovered there from Derby homes, and that's really down to the length of time it's taken to get cases into court, which has reduced that. And certainly in the first part of this new year, that's reflected in what's been picked up from the back end of last year. The savings are consistent with what we normally do save across the authority. We've had a little bit of a change of staff recently because we had one of our chaps, long-serving member, retire. So we had to do a recruitment process early in the year. So we've embedded a couple of new members of staff within our team, and they've hit the ground running. So if you can see there from the results we've got, I understand some of you are fairly new to this board. So if you want me to explain how anything works out, please give me a shout and we can talk them through.
One thing I'd like to add is that Tracy's team as well do work for several of the CMAP partners as well, and do work for South Derbyshire, Ashfield District Council, Amber Valley, and North Warwickshire. So there's and one of the things that did hit Tracy's team at the end of last financial year was the surge in right to buys caused by a change in policy. You had about 300, was it?
I think it was about 350. Huge surge. Everybody, I think, who obviously was ever thinking about buying their property, put an application in, whether they thought they could afford it or not. But of course, that initiates all our checks. So we've had to do them. I think we've got about 70 left out of the 350. And of course, they came in a 3-week window. Was it October? I think they had to be in by the 21st of November. So after that, the budget meeting at the end of October, we had 3 weeks to get them in, and they flew in. So we've spent a lot of our time since November working our way through them, with some good results, I have to say. So we have prevented quite a few with one reason or another.
Counter fraud policy, which we bring with the committee, needs to be reviewed in the next 12 months, so that's something that we'll be looking at. The council's overall approach to fraud risk, and one of the things that did concern me several years ago is that fraud was not mentioned on any of the risk registers. We got it put onto the strategic risk register. It's now been downgraded onto the departmental directorate ones. Tracy and I monitor what's going on there as well, and we are responsible for updating some of the risks on there. And it's not perfect, but we are getting there. But the thing about fraud is it can change. The way people do fraud is always changing, so it's keeping on top of how people do things. There was no reports of money laundering that we've received as a council. Same with bribery as well, so nothing around there. I reported in the half-yearly report that a couple of whistleblowings. They're both reflected in here. We've had none since, none in 24-25. I do understand one may have come in the last few weeks, but I'm not made aware of that. Regulation relation to the Investigative Powers Act, again, we've had no applications for directed surveillance made in 24-25. And the last item on there was something the committee asked Alison and myself to have a look into, and that's fraud awareness training. We've purchased a system. Tracy and I have gone through it, and we're just looking at making just one or two little tweaks for it. Our rollout of it has been scuppered somewhat by these other mandatory courses that keep coming in, like first of all, the health and safety. And just when we think we're going to let's get this in there, along comes the GDPR one. I'm thinking the last thing anybody needs now is a mandatory course on fraud awareness training straight after the GDPR one. So we're looking at September as the earliest to roll this out. And one of the things I was thinking about as well is perhaps getting, if we can, I don't know how we're going to do it, but getting the Audit and Governance Committee access to it so they can have a look at it and have a go on it as well. So acting as a bit of training for the committee as well. That's it, thank you, Chair.
Okay, we've got a couple of quick questions. One is, have you planned for an influx, albeit maybe slight, after the training?
We do tend to find that when we've done sort of in-person training before, you get a little influx. They're all risk assessed when they come in to see if there's any sort of valid complaint in there. But we can normally manage them within resource.
And you just deal with that resource requirement as it comes up.
I think one of the good things about some elements of fraud is that some of it will be historic. So the evidence will be there if it is there. So they're not so timely on occasion.
Another quick question from me. Thank you for the statistics and figures, but are we to assume then that every single potential fraud case it's capable of being classified within these headings, or ought there be a heading for other or emerging skills, or skills not the right word?
These are the ones that Tracy's team look at. There will be other frauds around there. Whenever there's a fraud, Hannah will always report that through to you in the progress reports anyway. The biggest issue is quantifying the value of a fraud. Some are easier to quantify than others. A lot of the ones that internal audit get involved in are quite difficult to quantify. If it's straightforward fraud, I mean, we had one many years ago which we could, well, it was quite an interesting one. We reckoned it was over £100,000 was taken out of the council. It went to court for £35,000 to £40,000. But so there's differences in how people assess these type of things. But yeah, and if you've seen the ones in the press quite recently, in the last year or so, the one over in Nottinghamshire that had been going on for 20 odd years, and that was well over 100. Well, a lot of money, should we say? About £1 million, I think it's taken out. I can't remember now. There's an awful lot of. Some are dead easy to if you can see where they're going, but others. As Tracy put down here, she has to use like averages and stuff like that for some of her frauds to get a value. Are those values still relevant? And that's sometimes you can do, yeah. Certainly when you've got investigations, we've done investigations that have lasted some a few months. I've even been one that lasted 4 years, and then years ago. So. And that took a lot of my time up and a lot of the chief officer's time.
They're difficult to quantify sometimes in terms of staffing. For instance, we work with the DWP, and it's currently taking them 6 months to make a decision on a case, and a further 6 months with CPS to decide whether they're going to prosecute it. So we've got a year's worth of waiting where we're doing little bits in the background, just waiting for that final decision to be made, so they can cross over a number of years.
They will be categorised, classified, just not necessarily in here in this.
Yeah.
And what about does it fall within the remit of your team to handle any suspicions of employee fraud?
Yeah, we do get involved.
And that's reported on via a different mechanism then.
It's not reported on.
Not reported on here.
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes,
but it is reported at some point by some mechanism. Okay, that's enough for me. Thank you. Any Councillor Kerr and then
Yeah, I was going to ask about the blue badges. I think we've asked about this before.
services actually deal with the badge element.
So
They pick those up, yes.
I'm just thinking in terms of encouraging people to actually hand them in. If people knew that there was a penalty for using them, they might be a bit more upfront. And the other thing on the future potential future work programme, there was mention of the section 117 mental health act. That's an area where I don't know if that's
Members, any more queries or comments? Oh, sorry, you did raise your hand, Mr. Sunderland.
No, I don't. I was just saying.
You're waving, just saying hello. Yeah, Mr. Dolman.
Thank you. Let's go back to section 4, where you detailed that there's 2 controls that you currently find inadequate, Richard, which is no capacity to deliver training, and maybe the training, maybe the electronic training will put that right.
Yeah.
And if that's so, I guess the last bit is the ownership structure. You see as inadequate control. So I'd like to get your view on what you think needs to happen and who's accountable for that and when should it happen by.
It's a difficult one. The thing with fraud in most organisations, according to financial procedure rules, it's Alison as section 151 officer. But Alison doesn't have the time to, when you think about all the complexities of fraud, etc. So there's a lot of issues around all of that. I mean, everything's detailed down. I mean, we need to make sure that we've got a proper policy and framework in place, which we've got, getting people to actually understand that and how to use it. And that's one of the biggest concerns I have is that do people actually know what to do if they suspect fraud, for example? Do they? Most will go. I mean, the confusion for them, of course, is the internal audit and then there's the account fraud thing, so which ones they go to.
I guess I'm just concerned we haven't got ownership of fraud in the organisation, and I feel as a committee we should be mandating somebody somewhere to decide where that sits and to resource it appropriately. I don't think
We can make a recommendation that that's considered.
In the report, inadequate control and we do nothing about it. I feel we should resolve something.
Yeah, well, we will. We'll make a minuted recommendation that that's considered. I have a feeling I know where the recommendation's going, Alison. Are there any more queries or observations? Accounted for. Okay, thank you. Feel free to stay or leave.
Thank you very much.
Moving on then to item number 13 on our agenda, which is our own Audit and Governance Committee Annual Report 24-25, for noting for any revisions that members feel would be appropriate, and then to suggest that goes to full council for approval.
A good report then.
I realise there's no speaker because it's us, but everybody's had a copy, and we are willing to accept alterations right up until well now.
Yes, now. Yeah.
Okay. But if we're all happy, we can. No,
Very
Councillor
concise.
Cat.
Very concise.
So there were 1 or 2 bits where I felt it's not quite clear as to what the time frame is. So it's been received at this meeting, and therefore some things that have happened, but there's still future sense in here. So it's mostly just comments about tenses that I felt was slightly unclear.
Okay.
But I can share points like that with yourself and Jack.
So joking aside, Jack, if Councillor Cat gets those observations to you today, or
Yeah.
is that going to be achievable?
The council meeting, the next council meeting is July, I think, and you can make this recommendation or referral subject to those issues being ironed out.
So we can pass it subject to those alterations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Final
Good spot.
things to be agreed by the
Mr. Dolman?
Yeah, nothing on what it says. You highlight the Audit and Governance Committee handbook, which is cool to me in there. Who is responsible for keeping that up to date, that handbook? Because having looked at it recently, in terms of reference in there is one from 3 years ago. The risk management guide hasn't been updated since the new one came to this committee in March. So if you were to go to that handbook, you'd be looking at the risk handbook, which is from 2023. So I think it's in a bit of disrepair. So if we're highlighting it as an invaluable source to this committee, I think we need an owner of it and it needs to be maintained.
Good spot. And someone has read it, clearly, which is impressive.
Well, I never read it, but, well, I've forgotten all about it. So for me, it hasn't been invaluable. I know Richard sent it out when I first became a member. I haven't looked at it since, so I thought I'd better look at it.
I guess this is some under services matter who looks after our documentation suite.
I can pick it up with Richard and Hannah.
It's something that I brought in, but it's, as Solomon said, it's keeping up to date with all the other things I've got.
Of course, yeah, with a million documents to keep up to date, I understand.
Not going to be hands-on as much, it needs to be handed over.
I think Hannah and I were talking about it yesterday, saying it's one of the things that we need to have a look at.
Right, so it's already in the horizon. Were you not a co-opted member, Anthony, you would have received the job. But thanks for spotting it. Any other observations before we move to pass that to full council, subject to the alterations from council?
Yeah,
okay, thank you. Moving on then, item number 14 is the Audit and Governance Work Programme 25-26, and our recommendation is to agree the work programme for that municipal year as per Appendix 1. Everyone's had a copy.
Chair, my only concern, if you'll allow me, page 95, 4.4, top of the page there. We may be overloading, I think, the July agenda, because we've added on here the Symphony Waste Treatment Centre, and also underneath the second bullet point, an item scheduled for July meeting to receive a presentation on risk management strategies for the council AI programme. In my opinion, and it might just be mine, we could be overloading the agenda now if we're going to talk about the Symphony Waste Treatment Centre, which I don't think is going to be a quick 5-minute issue, and then going on to talk AI. I've just got fears that we're going to be overloading the agenda on two really important issues that I know councillors around the table are, involved in.
I think that's fair, yeah, it's a good point. I think there's two ways of dealing with that. One is to postpone, which is never ideal, but the other is that we could arrange special meetings, perhaps.
Yes, yeah.
Do the members have a view on which, if any, to have a special meeting for?
In my view, for those two items, we need a special meeting. Otherwise, because, we're going to be 2 hours on this regular meeting, I just think we're going to be overloaded.
Yeah, I mean, we are 2 hours anyway, aren't we, without the addition of any...
It's just my opinion. Yeah.
Any other views, members? Particularly from co-opted members, I understand special meetings means special trips. Would that present any issues?
If it's a special meeting, you can probably dial in and then
Yeah, if there's an option to come on, be online.
Okay.
Exactly, Philip. Yeah. I know we've all got busy diaries, but I think these two items are really important.
They're quite critical, and as you say, and you don't do them in 5 minutes.
No.
If you're going to do them, you'll do them properly.
Yeah. So looking at my diary, this will be at midnight then on the 31st of July. Yeah, I think unless there's any objections, let's do that.
Just to clarify then, is the suggestion that it's a formal additional formal meetings, or are they informal offline meetings?
Constituted, minuted and broadcast.
In terms of the risk management in the AI programme, part of the reason of bringing that to the July was because it kind of ties in with the other item on the agenda around information governance and information security. I think that was a kind of risk management angle, which allowed the two to kind of come together. I guess that might be a reason to potentially bring the AI item with that, so it's done at the same time.
I agree. I'm still sympathetic to the point that keeping members' attentions for 2 hours is an achievement. And
so what's in that right-hand column, which has the
why don't we just have that as a separate meeting then? And those 3 bullet points.
Do the 3 as separate.
And then obviously we can conduct the normal meeting as per on the left-hand column.
Sound suggestion. Can we do that?
I can take that way and
Support Jonathan.
Well, it was your idea, Councillor Bowler, I support it, so.
If there's any complications arise, then let's just stay close. Good point. So that was the work programme. Any other queries, comments on the work programme? Yeah, Mr. Stone.
January, it's in January meeting, yeah, the January meeting.
Not any more? Okay, thank you. So item number 15, the date of the next meeting is scheduled 23rd of July, subject to, as we've just been discussing, there may be another one. But then before we all excitedly hurry off, we need to circle back to a matter we discussed some time ago. And in order to do so, I'd like to propose that we move out of broadcast. So I propose that under section 100A part 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from this meeting during the discussion for the following business on the grounds that it involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3 part 1 of schedule 12A of the Act, snappy. That is, information relating to financial and business affairs of the local authority, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So in relation to the employment checks on roles of financial responsibility, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosure because the disclosure risk undermines the council counter-fraud measures. Somebody second that snappy motion. Thank you. And on that basis, then we'll move out of